Well, good morning, everyone. This is a great time to talk about the intersection of the worlds of hospitality, technology, and business. There's a lot going on in these particular fields. Just for some contextual perspective, from an investment and invention point of view, we have a company like Google. We all know about Google for all their tech work, but last year they made a big investment in the company Blue Bottle Coffee to help that coffee house continue to expand across the US. From an inventor's point of view, we have a guy like Jack Dorsey, who we all know from Twitter, but as now he's putting together Square, that has enabled small independent restaurants, food trucks, and even our farmers markets to take credit cards at any point in time that they'd like. And on the other end of the continuum, we have some really interesting nouvelle ideas coming out of the works. I don't know if any of you saw the New York Times business section yesterday, but on the front page, there was a big article about a company called Itza. It's a quinoa fast casual restaurant out in San Francisco. And when you walk in, there is no human to greet you. There is no human at the cash register. You basically go in, order what you want on a tablet, and then when it's ready, you will be called. Something will alert you that you need to walk to the other end of the restaurant, and you pull from a cubby your customized quinoa bowl. And the author mentioned that the quinoa was actually quite good, but the experience as a whole was very odd. So we have entrepreneurs tackling these worlds from multiple perspectives. And today we have three great panelists who are a combination of investors and company founders who are going to tell us a little bit about what it's like on the front lines today. And I thought we would start with Joanne. She has a wealth of experience in this space. One of her first big investments was 10 years ago with the company called Eater, which is now owned by Box today and valued at multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. So Joanne, maybe can you tell us a little bit about how ripe the space looks like for an investment today and some overarching thoughts about investing in it?
Sure. I just want to note, I never think there's anything new because if anyone, I'm sure that I'm probably one of the oldest ones in the audience, but there was an automat on 34th Street or 42nd Street where you put your money in and out came the food. So it's really coming back in a very different way, and technology is changing that. So I think it's a really interesting area. Years ago, getting people to invest in food technology businesses or even food in general has never been easy. If you own a restaurant, it's really people that you know that have known you that are interested in to take a seat at the bar. But I always say to people that are investing in companies, it's not so much about, wow, this could be a great opportunity and I see where the numbers are going. It's really understanding what you're investing in.
And Nick, what about you? Speaking of risk of sorts, one of your first investment pitches was to Steve. And the guy invented the internet, basically. Was it intimidating? Was it intimidating going to him and asking for some money? Which I believe was a personal investment first, before his company got involved.
Yeah, that is right. We met Steve, and fortunately, growing our business in DC, similar to Steve, we met him and he just invested personally at first. And it was incredible to see someone that had owned this huge revolution of customer behavior and changing the way people lived their lives and communicated. He understood this kind of massive shift in consumer behavior. And we kind of saw the same thing in food. We knew that should happen and it could happen. And so we knew that people were going to start thinking about food differently and then transacting differently. And that's a big change. That's a huge shift in consumer behavior and thinking and mentality. So to have someone that understood what goes into that big of a change and what it takes to build a company that can be part of that was really important. And I think incredible. Everyone at Revolution and Steve really do understand the bigger vision of Sweetgreen. It's not just about how much value we're trying to create in these first couple of years. It's really about trying to build something that is helping change the food industry.
In your first couple meetings with him, when they were maybe helping you shape the idea of your concept, is there anything in particular that stands out in terms of ideas he gave you or ways to take the product that really helped you guys grow?
Yeah, looking at our business, it was, today we build brick and mortar retail stores and we spend money, we build a store, we hire people, and we serve guests. and just trying to think even further out beyond that, what the future of the business is. We had a lot of really exciting conversations with Steve trying to think about the evolution of that food transaction, where it's going to go, and how consumers are going to change the way they think about their food, how they learn about their food, and then ultimately how they transact with it. So whether, like Steve just said, it's 5 years out, 10 years out, or whichever direction it goes, that was kind of a switch for us to really start thinking about our business and what the future of it was, and not just about how we can leverage technology and integrate it, but how we can do that while keeping the human element and the human touch. And we talk so much about technology and changing the way we operate or the way we source food, but at the end of the day, when we look at our business, it's really funny. We look at almost the innovation for Sweetgreen was kind of rewinding the clock 80 years, right? Going back to the way people were eating before food was so industrialized or processed. And so at the same time where we're adding a lot of technology to try to make the business operate better, our approach to food is very, we've kind of taken out some of the technology that was input into this highly industrialized food system.
And Joanne, speaking of technology, you invest in both straight up technology companies or food tech companies. Do you notice any differences between either what they're asking for from you or how you invest in them, whether it's a standard food company or more of a tech company?
Yeah, I've been really fortunate to invest in a broad array of verticals. And if you look at my portfolio, if you want to see them tagged, there's a lot that's involved in food. There's no doubt that the restaurant end, particularly in some of these fast casuals, and Nick and I were talking about this before, is that what I found interesting is that McCue and Numpang, which I'm an investor in from the very early, is that they ran into some of the same problems. They ran into some of the same financial problems and the same growth issues. Whereas in the technology end of the business, no matter what the content is, it could be a content company, it could be an e-commerce company, it could be a SaaS model. A lot of the issues they have early on are very similar across the board. I mean, they change as the business grows because you are solving different problems, but at the very onset, there are similarities across the board. And so as an early stage investor, I mean, it's nice to attempt to understand all their businesses, probably enough to be dangerous, but also there is consistency along all of them. So one of the things that I think is really important is I have a listserv and they all talk to each other because I think it's easier to get advice from your peers who have gone through a lot of these pinpoints of problems, or using the technology platforms out there, or using what's available to them to look at their businesses.
How have all of your investments over the past 5-10 years kind of shaped your investment strategy today?
I don't know if it's really changed my strategy. At the end of the day, I'm really investing in people. I really don't like to invest in arenas that there are 10 companies trying to solve a problem. Many of the times the people that came to me when they did, no one was really playing in that space. I mean, I have to feel connected to what they're doing, but at the end of the day, it's all about the entrepreneur.
All right. And just one side note that I just want to ask out of my own curiosity. You mentioned McCue and Numpang. Do you get free Vietnamese sandwiches and free tacos for life?
Yeah, I like to pay. I want to add to the bottom line.
All right. You're further investing
Exactly.
in the companies. All right. Alice, pretty soon, Culinary Agents is going to expand to France and to Italy and bring your company over there. Is there anything different that you've noticed in terms of how you have to run your company in Europe, whether it's human interaction or tech interaction?
Yeah, I think that everything has been a learning process. We're fortunate to partner with a really great established company already in Europe who already services the food and beverage industry. But this is really one of the rare industries, and the people and the processes and the view of hospitality transcends borders, and oceans, right? So we see similarity in approach and nurturing in Europe, and we're starting in France and Italy in particular, and later Asia. Different cultures, different approaches to how they run their businesses, much more less multi-unit groups, a lot of single-unit restaurants or family-owned restaurants who traditionally were just, having their children work in the restaurant when they became of age or not. But what was really fascinating in this process was that the first thing that our partner mentioned was this challenge of no trusted global professional network, no kind of online to marry and complement the offline, was something that their customers and their communities were really asking for. And that, I think, was the first aha moment for us collectively that, the idea or notion of a global online professional, community for this industry, is going to be a reality sooner than later. And 3 years ago when I was going on tangents during VC meetings and saying, imagine, international stages for career development and learning, they're like, what are you talking about? But slowly but surely, I'm getting these little flashback aha moments, and it's really exciting.
And you mentioned your partner. It's a pretty big partner, Metro. What can they allow you to do in Europe? What kind of assistance or stepping stone can they give you to expand your business?
Yeah, great question. They operate in 32 countries. They are the largest hotel supplier to restaurants, hotels, and caterers in Europe and Asia. And they service, they're a B2B supplier. They service chefs and restaurateurs in all these countries, both in major cities and remotely. And they bring us the knowledge of, well, in France, there's high seasonality. So it's more of a different challenge of helping people find jobs to satisfy their personal, I want to live in the mountains in the winter, I want to live by the beach in the summer. Their way of life is just so interesting, so different than what I'm used to and born and raised here. So,
right.
But yeah, of course, the knowledge, the reach. There are distributors, bringing up sales and marketing and operations in multiple countries at the same time is really scary for a startup. It's actually quite impossible at times. And having a partner that you trust in and that is also invested financially and time-wise is really, I think a huge win for us and the community.
And Nick, your company is also in expansion mode. Obviously, you started in the Washington, D.C. area, now is in New York and Massachusetts and California. As you scaled, how has technology helped the company to grow and to become bigger and better?
I mean, technology has played a huge part in the way we've grown and how we've done it, hopefully more efficiently and quicker than we would have without some of those pieces. And I mean, we look at throughout the whole business, from how we hire people to how we retain them, to how we keep our employees happy, to how we find our producers and farmers, to how we develop relationships with them. I mean, throughout our whole business, we've tried to leverage and integrate technology as much as we can. And as much as we do that, and I think Steve and Danny talked about this earlier, but it's really important for us to also remember that we're not a technology business. And we can harness the power of technology and integrate it as much as we can, but we can't then all of a sudden think that we're a technology company. We have to remember that we are a food company that is trying to connect real people with real food and invest in the communities we go into, and that is the mission. How we use technology to enhance that and enable that can be really powerful. Just one example, when we came to New York, actually, we had spent years building our farmer network in DC and, going to the farmers markets, meeting the producers, meeting the farmers, visiting their farms and building relationships. And when we came to New York, we had to do that within 6 months. We had signed a lease, and the minute we sign a lease, we really do start looking at producers and trying to meet people. And we used a platform called Farmers Web. That was really, really helpful for us to connect with the right kind of farmers early on and find the producers that could grow what we wanted to sell and what we could buy what they wanted to grow at the same time. But it helped us really lengthen that amount of time that it would take to build a local regional supply chain. And even using that technology, that was important for us to not think that that was the whole answer. It was part of the solution that made us, saved us time and made it more efficient, but we still had to go out and meet the farmers and build a relationship. So it didn't replace that human touch. It didn't replace the connection you have with your growers or your employees or any part of the system where you use technology, but they really do enhance and hopefully make the whole process more efficient.
What about as you went into some of these new markets, what works in DC may or may not work in New York or California. Were there any challenges or hurdles that you had to come or overcome or things you had to learn about in terms of successfully entering a New York market or a California market that were different from your original market? Absolutely. I mean, every city we've gone to is very different, and I think our food ethos and what we believe about food
has been consistent, and we believe that in every city. But the community we build and the stores we build and the supply chain we build in every city is different. And I think that's something that you don't normally see in fast food, and that's what's a bit different about the system we're trying to create in our food ethos. Is we believe that food should be regional and it should be local, and it should be eaten when it comes out of the ground, and you should be buying it from people that are growing near you. And like I said, the innovation for us in that idea is kind of just rewinding to the way people had to eat before it was industrialized and before, like, Uber globalization. I think the simplicity of just honoring food at its most basic form and having that connection to who grows it. The one thing that is constant is just the value of the transparency. So our guests in every city really do value this idea of just being connected to the food and understanding who's growing it and what's being done to it. So no matter what city we go to, we do show in all of our restaurants all of our producers and farmers and what ingredients they're growing for us. And that sense of connection and transparency is huge for us.
I think I've seen that at Shake Shack before. They all, highlight who they have, which is kind of a nice touch to that.
Yeah.
Joanne, we had a nice conversation last week about investments and people looking for investment dollars these days. And you said, do people ever think about going to the bank? No more. It's a VC or bust sort of thing. Why do you think there is such a dependence on VCs? And do you think maybe people in the food space or other spaces would have more luck or success going the old school route and asking for a traditional bank loan?
Well, I think the industry has just changed. I just want to talk about a little bit also what Nick was talking about, the platform. It's not a technology business. It's a food business. It's a hospitality business. And I think there's not a business being built today that doesn't have a technology platform. The platform just helps you run your business better. It doesn't change what your business is. And that's been the success of Sweetgreen, because they realize that platform is making their lives better for them and for their consumers. I think with the banking industry is that, we've all lived through the banking debacle not that long ago. And there are a bunch of companies that are now starting to percolate where you, as a consumer, can decide, I want to put money in and I want to lend it to that person, like an old school banking transaction. So money has shifted. I do think that everyone feels that they need to raise money when they start a business these days, and I'm not a big fan of that. I think that if you can figure out how to run your own business and own your own business, unless of course you realize it's $1 billion opportunity where you need money in order to grab real estate and grow quickly, there's nothing wrong with the old school way of building things. I see agencies that come and they'll say, I have this agency, we need to raise money. It's like, why do you need to raise money?
Right.
You're an agency. When you leave, the business is gone. There's not anything there that you're growing. It's just you're growing a lifestyle business, which, by the way, is really what the most of America has been built on. And so I think we're going to see a shift in capital and from crowdfunding to these sources where you can get capital from that is going to be able to shift the banks. I know, we've gone to banks for money and they're like, well, we don't really necessarily want to give you money for that. And it's just like, if you're not giving me money, who are you giving money to?
Right. Right. So would your advice for an entrepreneur starting out and looking to grow a little bit, maybe do as much as they can with the money they have and then just try to max that out before they take on money from somebody else?
Yeah. It's every business is so different. I think it's important to show traction. I think it's important to move your business forward. I think it's important to have a plan. If you see where this business is going, to go out and raise money. And I've seen some people that have bootstrapped their business to do, $5-8 million in a year, and then they realize, wow, now I want to raise money. And that actually is really hard to raise money too, because no one was involved in their business from the very beginning, and they're not really sure they want to put business and money into a business that's so mature. Each one is completely different. And as Alice was alluding to, raising money sucks. It really does. It's like the worst. You spend all this time raising money. You don't get to focus on your business. Everyone hopes that the first person they see is going to write the check and you can go back to business as usual. And unfortunately, when you grow these large businesses, that's just part of the drill, is that you got to raise money. And it doesn't necessarily get easier from day one as you're like in a larger series.
Right. And Alice, before you went out and raised money, you had a very successful career at IBM, in a good industry. When you made the transition and struck out on your own, what were people telling you? Did they think you were crazy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a very unconventional career at IBM I started in the mailroom, and I was part of the original digital media team back in 1999 when a lot of things were happening in the technology space, focusing on unstructured data in the future. So I really enjoyed working on these kind of new things, and that's why I stayed, quite frankly, for so long. But I was always, my passion and everything I loved was in the food and beverage space. And it was really difficult to leave because I was personally proud that I had a pretty well-established career there. And I could have stayed another 20 plus years and done well. But there was, and my mentor there kind of mentions me that for entrepreneurs, there's a burning desire. And if that's not fulfilled, you're always going to regret it. And that's exactly what I had. I saw this opportunity, and I had a personal connection to a lot of my friends who were chefs and people in the industry just frustrated with the lack of. And I said, well, maybe I have a different perspective because I spent 13 years on the technology side on innovations. Maybe I can actually be the voice to bridge a lot of the frustrations from the industry because it's such a unique one, and develop and co-develop and support this huge opportunity. So yeah, it was a very great learning experience. And to answer your question, people did think I was crazy.
Was there a freak out moment ever early on where you thought, shoot, what did I just do? Or were you so focused that it was going to happen no matter what?
I had the freak out moment again and again for quite some time. I think the first one was, when the next paycheck didn't come anymore, and I was like, oh, I really did that. And then, then it was just focus and do it, and it was really hard, between fundraising and trying to change the behavior, quite frankly, of a whole community. I mean, right now we're operating in 30 cities, but up until last year, last September, we were on 3 people on the team supporting 30 cities. And when you're changing behavior and trying to support the hospitality community and giving them the type of hospitality, but running a tech company. I mean, we are a tech company. We spend hours looking at tweaking algorithms to make the matching better for, the cook that has specific skills for the right restaurant. So it was, I had a lot of freak out moments. And then you kind of say, all in, go home, go big or go home. And I did. I think as a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners do, you make your sacrifices. And the 13 years at IBM afforded me a 401k that fueled the first year of growth of Culinary Agents.
Thank you, IBM.
Yeah.
Nick, let me ask you, as you guys continue to expand, how has Revolution influenced the culture of Sweetgreen? Is there anything that they've lent you in terms of company values that you guys are applying to your company?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, like I just said before, really thinking about the evolution and the future of this food transaction, and not, you have to balance that with hopefully brilliant execution in the present day, but you also have to look forward. So, over the past couple of years since we've met Steve and the Revolution team, we spend a lot of time thinking about the future of our space and the future of the transaction. And I think aside from that, really understanding what tools are necessary to do that. So how do you build innovation into the business in a way that isn't reactive or kind of always on your heels? How do you build the idea of innovation and thinking about the future of your business into the regular cadence of your business? And then building a team that can do that. So really making the right kind of investments at the right times in your team to create what you think the future is.
Let me ask you one more personal question. Your parents ran La Caravel for a long time here, and that was one end of the restaurant spectrum. You're at another end, or sort of. What do they think about your decision to run Sweetgreen, and what do they think about the business?
She's right there.
I'm very proud.
There you go. But
The mom response.
exactly. She says she's very proud for those that didn't hear it. But no, I mean, looking at what my parents did in the very fine dining side, and then looking, like you said, on the opposite spectrum, the one thing that does, I think, connect us and link us is just this sense of hospitality. And again, we learned that from a lot of places. I mean, I learned it from Danny, obviously. Looking at how you can take those elements from fine dining and create that experience in a more fast food, fast casual setting, which didn't really exist, right? And I think you're seeing that come to life today, where you can have what was the best about fine dining, the qualities there, and kind of infusing those into an experience that is more convenient, affordable, and accessible. But you can still have that sense of hospitality. So I think that was probably one of the biggest things I took from my parents' experience.
And Joanne, I want to end with you today. I want to see if you can tell us maybe one or two companies out there in this kind of ecosystem that look appealing to you. Mostly I want to pump you for a little free advice, see who we can invest in, who's next. But who do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any that have popped into my box recently in the food space, but I have a couple that, I think it's the food space is so interesting. And like, for instance, like I'm an investor in VenueBook. VenueBook is right now, is going to close on a huge round, and it's changing how people book venues. And she went about it in a really smart way. And it's changing and making all these venues much easier. It's making their lives easier. Now, I've invested in a company called How Good. How Good is essentially, the good housekeeping seal of approval on food. People want to know what's going in their food, but it also helps the people that are running the companies that are selling the products to say, wow, we don't need 10 crackers on our shelves. Actually, the data that we're getting back is 3 boxes of crackers is ample for who the customer is coming into our stores. So, all of those are back-end technologies that are helping companies run more efficiently, and at the end, allowing them to do what they do best. And so those are just, two. I mean, and I'm an investor as well in VinePair, which is, content around the spirits, wine and spirits. And for the millennials, which is really the next generation in regards to consume, this is a great site. The numbers are crazy, and they read this stuff. They're connected to this stuff. And so what I think is different is when you look at these businesses early on is where they're going to go and how are they going to make an impact on how people eat, which you've done, how people hire people, which you've done, and how they're going to change the industries. The industries don't change, it's just the back end that changes that makes it all better.
Great. Well, that's about all the time we have today. I want to thank the 3 panelists and thank you all for listening.